All right, boys, this is the Pick Six Podcast. And this Sunday Night Super Friends, let's get to it. That's Will Brinson. That's John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson, and this is the Sunday Night Super Friends Week 4 NFL Recap 2023 edition. All right, to remind all y'all folks out there, here's the plan. We're going to hit on our top 10 takeaways from Week 4, the biggest storylines, the best players, the top plays, and the suspect coaching decisions that bring us together as a nation. Hello, Luke Getzey and Matt Canada. But first, remember, give us a little thumbs up if you're watching us on the YouTube at NFL and CBS. And, of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a show. All right, let's get to it. First up, we're going to Western New York. All right, Breech, remember 3 weeks ago when someone on this podcast that looked a lot like me, but less handsome, had some concerns about Josh Allen after 4 turnovers and the Bills lost to Zach Wilson and the Jets? We all wondered if turnover Josh is going to be a recurring theme. Yeah, not so much. So they got after it against the old Dolphins. The Bills D had Tua looking uncomfortable at times, which is something Tua hasn't done all season. Breech, are the Bills the best team in the AFC?
I don't know about the best team in the AFC, but I will say this, not to toot my own horn. I'm totally in the Brinson school of humble bragging. Because look, did we all pick the Bills to win this game? I think we all picked them to beat the Dolphins.
I picked the Bills to win the Super Bowl, but sure, yeah.
I picked the Dolphins to win this game.
That's where we're going with this. But of course, Brinson, not let me finish talking.
I had Bills as the best bet, actually.
This is again. So I picked the Bills, and picked the Bills to win the AFCs. Brinson picked them to win the Super Bowl. We're all very high in the Bills. I don't think anyone was off the Bills after Week 1, even though Josh Allen looked absolutely silly, making 4 turnovers. But the one thing about this game, though, is that I'm not ready to crown them as the best team in the AFC, even though I do think they're very good. It is weird that whenever Josh Allen plays the Dolphins, he looks like he's playing a high school team. Like, he just dominates them. He puts up these huge numbers. I don't know what the Dolphins need to do defensively they can't crack Josh Allen. He's gone out there. I think he has the NFL record for most multiple touchdown pass games against one team. It's just staggering with what he's been able to do. But I will say, I do think the Bills needed this game more than Miami did. I think this is going to be the Dolphins were undefeated, Brinson. The Bills still had an ugly loss in Week 1. Dolphins coming off a 70-point game. And I feels like if the Dolphins had won this game, that, all you're going to be talking about the rest of the year is that, hey, look, the Dolphins are the team to beat in the AFC East. I think the Bills are now that team after winning this game. But Brinson, it looks like based on your 17 facial expressions, you disagree.
I don't think the Bills are the best team in the AFC, because I think the Bills are the best team in the NFL.
That's a hot take. Go ahead.
Look, they have won their last 3 games by 90 points. They beat 2 bad teams. They beat the crap out of them, and then they beat the crap out of a good team in the Miami Dolphins. Everybody, all the Johnny-come-latelys, and no offense to Harry's Dolphins. I really like Miami. I enjoy them. I think they're fun. Love Mike McDaniel. I've enjoyed watching Tua. Ryan Wilson peacocking around every Sunday night about how Tua deserves some massive contract. And, Josh Allen, Josh Allen just quietly taking care of business. Week 1, plays poorly against the Jets, bounces back. And I think, maybe in hindsight, that Jets loss and the way that they lost that game would be, it ends up being like a springboard for not saving their season, but for okay, Josh Allen is now playing it within the offense. Everybody sort of they batten down the hatches, they circle the wagons, as Chris Berman used to say, and they rallied around this team. You remember seeing that pep talk Stephon Diggs was giving Josh Allen against the Jets in that Week 1 loss. And I just think that this Buffalo team is complete across the board. Their defense, they allowed the Dolphins to have 2 7-play 70-yard plus drives to open it up. Once Mike McDaniel got done with his script, they didn't score again until the third quarter. And they scored a touchdown in the third quarter, missed a 2-point conversion, and don't score again for the rest of the game, right? I mean, the Bills were in total control, total command of this game. They scored on 5 of their first 6 possessions. Josh Allen, as that graphic showed, has now he is 1 game away from Drew Brees, which is kind of funny. But Brees, always stretch it over the goal line with 4 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. He has 3 of those. I mean, he's going to hold this record for a long time when he eventually gets there, probably later this year. And Stephon Diggs, most games with 120 plus receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Since the merger, he has 4 of them. He is behind only, he's tied with Marvin Harrison and Wesley Walker, behind only Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. I think people sort of forgot just how good Diggs was, and he abused the Miami secondary on Sunday to the tune of 3 touchdowns.
I don't think anyone forgot that Stephon Diggs was good. It's just that there are a lot of good teams in the AFC. Let me.
The Bills are the best team in the NFL. That's my hot take.
No, we heard you at the beginning. That's wrong, but that's okay. That's why we have this conversation. Breech, let me see what you think about this, because Brinson pointed out that maybe the week 1 loss to the Jets was a wake-up game of sorts for the Bills, but you sort of touched on it. The Jaguars can't beat the Texans. The Bills can't beat the Jets. And in much the same way that the Dolphins can't beat the Bills. So is it just one big circle failure, or is it in fact a situation where the Bills have found a way to overcome their demons that aren't the New York Jets?
I think that if I'm a Dolphins fan, like say Harry, our producer, then I'm not really worried about this. I'm just crossing my fingers and hope I don't run into the Bills in the playoffs just because they seem to be Miami's kryptonite there. But the Dolphins are running over everyone. They still have a high-powered offense that's tough to stop. But one thing about the Bills, though, is their defense is playing pretty well over the past 3 weeks without Von Miller. They don't have their best pass rusher, who is expected to come back and start practicing this week now that he's missed the minimum of 4 games that you have to miss for starting the season on injured reserve. So they're going to get even better defensively. But I would say with the Dolphins that, Vic Fangio probably makes this defense better eventually, but I think people got a little high on them because they did play so well over the past 2 weeks against the Broncos, only giving up 20, the Patriots 17. But the more we see from those offenses, holding those teams to those point totals, not that impressive. You look at when the Dolphins actually played 2 good teams, the Chargers and Bills are giving up 41 points per game. So it's a completely different element. So there is definitely some of the NFL has all this parity. Anyone can beat anyone. I mean, we saw a little bit Sunday night, which we'll talk about with the Jets almost knocking off the Chiefs. So there's definitely an element of the parity. But I think the Bills are the better team, like by this much. And if you're not watching on YouTube, it's like 8 centimeters.
1/8 of a breach. Brinson, before we move on here, give me your top 3 teams.
In the NFL or the AFC?
The NFL.
Bills 1, 49ers 2, Chiefs 3.
Neutral field breach. Let's say they play in Cincinnati, because Cincinnati won't be playing any playoff games this year.
Wouldn't early dunk.
Or Pittsburgh. It could be either one. The Dolphins, and it's warm weather. They build a dome. The Dolphins face the the Bills face the 49ers. What's the spread in that game, and who are you taking?
I think the 49ers are probably favored, but I think I would pick the Bills.
Really?
That would be my exact Super Bowl.
Okay,
that's what you picked. That's exactly what you
Bills over Niners. Yeah.
All right. Well, you're well on your way to being I think they call it a sharp. You're a sharp. All right. So I think Breech is right. Brinson, do you agree that there's no need to worry about the Dolphins? This is sort of their kryptonite, going to Ralph Wilson Stadium, as I like to call it, the Bills. And I believe Josh Allen is now 10-2 against Miami, and I think that's pretty good according to my math.
By the way, teams that score 60+ points in a football game now all 1-6 all time in the game following it up. I think too that was sort of the thing.
That's an insane stat. I don't want to underplay that, because that is absolutely bonkers.
Right. Like 7 teams have done it, and like 1 team has won the next week after scoring 60 points or more. And I think a lot of it too is like, if you score 70 points, you're running a bunch of plays. You're spending all week talking about the 70 points you dropped on somebody, or the 60 points you dropped on somebody. It
hasn't happened since 1966, so it's not like it happens every year.
Right. Well, so you're seeing a lot of your video clippings, and back then you're reading a lot of your like Sanskrit clippings. I think there's just like a natural, like a likely letdown from that. And plus, the other thing too was when this line came out, we were talking about like the early odds show on Monday, and it was like a bunch of people were like, wait a minute, the Bills are favored? The Dolphins just scored 70. And you just heard this, like a bunch of people were like, I mean, the Dolphins, it's like everyone wanted to take the Dolphins. They just scored 70. And the Bills have just been playing really good football. So, I got Buffalo as the best team in football right now. I think the Kansas City, and we'll get to them in a minute, better defense than people sort of expected. But
all right, we'll talk about Kansas City.
But I want to give Sean McDermott credit very quickly. Buffalo's defense has been outstanding the last 3 weeks. And we didn't really see it with the Jets. It was hard to kind of figure that out because of the Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson thing. But really has been outstanding the entire season. And McDermott has settled back into calling plays, something he hadn't done in a few years.
Yep. No, I agree with that. 9 sacks, 4 interceptions.
And just for the record, Wilson.
Yep.
I can confirm that Brinson's Super Bowl pick was in fact Bills 49ers. A commenter said he changes it all the time. I'm looking at our preseason story. So this was not a change.
Why would I change my Super Bowl pick?
The commenters are accusing you of changing it. So I was just backing you up for a second. Wilson's Super Bowl pick was Chargers, Eagles, and mine was Bengals, Cowboys. So Wilson and I are just hanging out.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. All right. Let's go to the team that Brinson thinks is only the second best in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers. They're my QB1 team, my number one team, in large part because of Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, who, again, dealing once again, 28-21 for 283, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He makes playing quarterback look like any of us could do it and be successful at it. Shout out to the Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon, the first-year head coach, and Josh Dobbs for balling out. But at the end of the day, this is all about the 49ers. They feel unstoppable. Brinson, I'll come back to you. What is going to be the speed bump that slows this team up? Because it doesn't feel like it's going to be another team in the NFC.
I mean, injury, that's really been sort of, and that's random and hard to predict, but the 49ers have been injury prone. Excuse me. The last few years, part of that maybe playing those 2 games back to back at MetLife Stadium when Jimmy G tore his ACL, Nick Bosa tore his. That would probably be my biggest concern. This team, Brock Purdy, I don't know if it's like a Tom Brady factor or if he's lucky, but the guy just doesn't throw nobody can catch his interceptable passes. They just get dropped all the time. I think he's just a lot better and more efficient than people give him credit for. And it's a good case of quarterback who fits really well with an offense and with a coach and with a playbook and just understanding what Kyle Shanahan wants, fitting in perfectly with a Kyle Shanahan offense. And then, Christian McCaffrey, look, when the trade happened, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to remind you guys that you said it was a dumb trade, but I think you both did. And I said it was a great trade. And he's the perfect player.
So you were just making stuff up.
Well, Wilson hated the trade. I know that. He called me an idiot and said it wasn't going to work out. And I think you did too, Breech. Christian McCaffrey is the perfect player for a Kyle Shanahan offense. Just in his ability as a smart football player, a pass catcher, a runner, and and he blocks as well too. So I just think the fact that Purdy and McCaffrey fit so well into what they already had and to what they do on offense, it's just they're going to be a really tough out.
So, Breech, let me ask you this, because Purdy is exactly the right fit. And, if it makes you feel better, just assume that the 49ers took him 3rd overall and took Trey Lance in the 7th round because it's a wash at this point. But today, George Kittle only had 1 target for 9 yards. Deebo Samuel's a little banged up. And so they just leaned on everyone else starting with Christian McCaffrey, and Brock Purdy and the defense did the rest. It's only week 4. I don't want to overact, but I'm having trouble seeing what the speed bump is because for John Lynch, the general manager, and Shanahan, the coach, the issues are personnel in terms of finding the right dudes when it comes to quarterback. Everything else appears to fall into place consistently. So is there a scenario, barring staying healthy or, remaining healthy, that they just keep on keeping on?
I think that they're the best team in the NFC. And to the point of Brock Purdy being kind of the perfect quarterback for Shanahan's system because he does what Shanahan wants that person to do instead of there is no working outside the system. Shanahan's been an offensive coordinator or a head coach since 2008. So it's been forever. And I feel like he went to bed tonight thinking that was the best game I've ever seen run in my offense. It was perfection. It was the chef's kiss game where you have Purdy completing 20 of 21 passes. That's the highest completion percentage in 49ers history, the 4th highest in NFL history. And to have a cheat code like Christian McCaffrey back there who can run the ball or catch the ball is just exactly what Shanahan needs. And so what is the speed bump? We're going to find out if a good team can go toe-to-toe with them because they're going to play the Cowboys in week 5. And I think that's the only question mark with the 49ers is we've seen them beat the Cardinals. Great. They beat the Giants. Okay. They beat the Steelers. They're bad. And they played an interesting game with the Rams. but now they are going to have a big game against the Cowboys. So if they can put up these numbers against the Cowboys defense, then it's just let's just put them in the playoffs, and we don't need them to play the rest of the season because it's out of hand how good they are. And like you guys said, it does feel like injuries would be the only thing that can derail them after that.
By the way, Brandon Ayuk, man, quietly, 6 targets, 6 catches, 146 receiving yards. Like is he like the most unheralded star receiver in the NFL right now?
Why do you say quietly? Because I feel like he's making a lot of noise and people seem like
I just feel like I don't feel like people don't lump him in with the star receivers.
Well, I mean, he's not Justin Jefferson. What tier are you putting him in?
I mean, I think he's sort of having that breakout year this year.
I think he's having a great year too. I just don't know I don't think he's flying under the radar. I feel like people know who he is. I mean, that offense starts with Christian McCaffrey, who you identified as a superstar.
I mean, Puka Nacua gets more headlines than Brandon Ayuk.
Well, Puka Nacua is having a ridiculous rookie season. He's breaking all sorts of records. I don't know if Brandon Ayuk broke any records so far.
Well, and the other thing with Brandon Ayuk is that I think people were, especially if you're in a fantasy draft, you probably thought, I'll take Deebo Samuel ahead of Brandon Ayuk. And he's had a quiet past couple weeks. I don't think he played against the Giants. He only had like 40 yards against the Rams. So, but then he blew up against the Steelers. I don't remember what his exact number was, but it was over 100 yards. But I think part of the reason that he kind of got forgotten is just because he didn't play in week 3 and only had 40-something yards in week 2. So just a little bit of that.
Well,
but again,
all I'm saying is he's flying under the radar, and I think I think you guys both agreed with me, even though Wilson attempted to disagree.
So Breech
has broken the radar.
Yeah, he broke the radar. He's flying under the radar because he's walking. He's not flying at all. Breech, Brinson said he likes the Bills and then the 49ers. What's your ranking?
I would have the 49ers ahead of the Bills. I think the 49ers look like the best team in the NFL right now.
They feel like the most complete team and the least likely to falter under pressure. And it's a weird thing to say when you're talking about Josh Allen versus Brock Purdy, but that's where we are. And I think it comes back to, again, when you have Luke Getsy or Matt Canada coordinating up your offense, you have Kyle Shanahan, you can get a lot of mileage out of whoever your quarterback is. I like Ken Dorsey. I don't know if Ken Dorsey is great at his job or just has the benefit of Josh Allen. Josh Allen certainly appears to be playing at his usual all-pro level, but I feel more comfortable with Kyle Shanahan. Do you feel like, well, yeah, I think Ken Dorsey would probably take Kyle Shanahan too. I mean, do you Breech mentioned the matchups that they've had. I mean, they haven't played like the Bills. We agree with of the two teams, we agree the Bills have the best win, right, against the Dolphins. Yeah, but again, and Breech noted about the Dolphins can't beat the Bills for some reason. I mean, the Texans always beat the Jaguars, but you don't feel like the Jaguars are an inferior team. I mean, the Steelers, the Rams, who kept it within one score, the Steelers, Giants, and Cardinals are probably 3 of the bottom 10 teams in the NFL right now. They're not great. I'm not saying the Bills. I mean, the Bills stomped the Raiders and the Commanders too. Like and they lost to the Jets. I get it. Yeah, you got to play who's on the schedule. Very interested to see how 49ers and Cowboys Sunday night next week. A week from tonight is what I'm trying to say. That's a pretty spicy Sunday night football matchup. We better get a full health. Just in terms of taking I would take the Bills over the Niners. I think it'd be really close. I think on a neutral field it'd be probably a pick 'em. Maybe the Niners would be a little bit favored. I just think if you're going to give me I agree that Kyle Shanahan better than Ken Dorsey, but Josh I was making the Ken Dorsey plus Josh Allen. I think I'm still leaning towards Shanahan. Oh yeah, I see. I'll take Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey over Shanahan and Purdy, just because like if you're down 17 points to the opponent in this particular matchup, I mean, I think you would much rather have Josh Allen than Brock Purdy. Yeah, and you don't want to be down 17. I think it's the but I'm just you never know. All right, we're gonna go from the West Coast Breech to what was your previous beat? Entertainment and pop culture. We're going to Kansas City by way of MetLife Stadium. And man, remember that quaint time where we thought that Jackson Mahomes was a distraction? Turns out that Jackson Mahomes, Instagram, TikTok star, isn't even a blip on the Taylor Swift radar. Part of me wonders, and I can't believe I have to talk about this, but this is something that producer Harry is dying to talk about because he's a huge Taylor Swift fan. But it actually is a fair point. You saw the game on Sunday night. You saw the Chiefs jump out to 70-0 lead. You saw Zach Wilson tied at 20-20. Then Zach Wilson ended up with the fumble. and the Chiefs sort of drugged their way to victory. But, there were probably 25 shots in the suite of Taylor Swift with all her entourage, from Ryan Reynolds to Eric Stonestreet was there. We saw the guy from Queer Eye, I think Kyan is his name. We saw everyone Hugh Jackman was there.
Paul Rudd.
Sophie Rudd was
Turner,
there.
Fresh off her divorce from Joe Jonas.
We talked about that. Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones. So everyone and their brother and sister were there. And I'll tell a quick story. So my first Super Bowl was 2011, the one in Indianapolis, and Madonna was the halftime show. So I went to hear a press conference because, like Breech, that's how I roll. And I remember seeing her there and then thinking about Tom Brady. And Tom Brady isn't even in the same universe of fandom and popularity as Madonna. And this feels that way. Travis Kelce, and it's funny you mentioned Sophie Turner, who was on Game of Thrones, and the reasons. Which Jonas did she just get divorced from, Breech?
Joe.
So one of the things she said is that she didn't want to be known as Joe Jonas's wife. And part of me wonders, and Breech, I'll put it to you because you are a pop culture correspondent. Is there a situation where Travis Kelce does not want to be known as Taylor Swift's friend, number one? And number two, is this in any way, shape, or form a distraction?
Number one, there is no way on this earth that Travis Kelce is thinking like that, because if that was the case, you wouldn't even go on a date with Taylor Swift, because that everyone outside the football bubble is going to look at you as Taylor Swift's guy, not the other. Taylor Swift is not Travis Kelce's girlfriend. Travis Kelce is Taylor Swift's boyfriend. That is how 99% of the world will know Travis Kelce. That is how people outside the United States will know Travis Kelce. That is how anyone who is not an NFL fan will know Travis Kelce. So yeah, you're definitely Taylor Swift's boyfriend. And you know what? I don't think it was a distraction. Granted, it's only been one real game. You can count last week, but it was kind of surprised at the last minute, so we won't throw that. It seemed like the only person who was distracted was Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like that's probably because his wife has been keeping up all week talking about how she's best friends with Taylor Swift now, because those two are apparently BFFs. I mean, they're drinking in the MetLife Stadium box together.
There's some pretty funny shots of Brittany Mahomes with sour faces, as Taylor Swift's celebrating something. It's what is this it's Brittany's furious that Patrick's playing poorly, or so I don't know. It's she's got the pouty faces, and Taylor Swift's got a vodka cranberry up in the air, celebrating.
Taylor's oh, sorry, your husband's thrown 2 interceptions, and my guy has 40 yards receiving already in the second quarter.
Yeah. I don't think it's a distraction. I think, man, I tell you what, you can build a conspiracy theory pretty quickly that this is a mutually beneficial. And I don't believe this. I'm just saying that Taylor Swift has a movie coming out about her Eras tour. Now, is she going to get some more eyeballs on it because of the NFL? Sure. Is she getting publicity? Sure. Is it a fairly negligible amount of publicity that she's adding to her already enormous stardom and publicity that she's already got for this tour? Probably. The guy who's benefiting here, if you're just being looking at the numbers, Travis Kelce, his jersey sales are up 700%. He gained 300,000 Instagram followers or something like that. And New Heights, the Kelce podcast, which is really just fantastic, has over it's 1.2 million subscribers on YouTube. The numbers went through the roof. I think they had 68,000 likes on the most recent episode where they talked about the week 3 recap and talked about the Taylor Swift situation. And by the way, smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube now. Throw us a like button. We're talking about Taylor Swift. And I think it's fun. I think it's awesome. I think it's hilarious how this is you couldn't have made this up before the season. If you they kept running all these the NFL script writers or It's if you've been okay, what about this? Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, and Zach Wilson has to replace him, and he outplays Patrick Mahomes for the most part in a week 4 game with Taylor Swift watching her boyfriend Travis Kelce from the luxury suite. You would say, if you'd said that, if that had been your bold prediction on our bold prediction show before the season, we would have been that's a D, because it's so
and the most far-fetched part would have been Zach Wilson outplaying Patrick Mahomes. Not even Taylor Swift in the box dating.
Right, but we would have been oh my God, it'd be Wilson. Okay, that would be an A because it's so crazy, but it's a D because you've boxed yourself in with 3 or 4 very specific things that it just can't possibly be true. And yet here we are in reality.
So producer Harry points out, I'm just seeing this note here, there were exactly 17 cutaways to Taylor Swift during the Sunday night telecast. And it feels like that's low. It felt like they were closer to 34 or what's that, 60, 68? Look at that math.
Was
All
there
right,
an
yeah.
over-under you could bet on?
I took the over of 200, so I think I lost.
By the way, do you think it's a coincidence that in his first game with Taylor Swift watching, Travis Kelce had 69 yards, and in his second game with Taylor Swift watching, he had 6 catches on 9 targets?
I think that is the definition of coincidence.
I don't think it's coincidence. I think Mahomes knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, Mahomes proceeded to run. All he did was run after he got Kelce to 6 catches on 9 targets.
All right, well, let's talk about Mahomes because Breech hinted at it. He played like straight up dog dookie, and if Zach Wilson had played like that, they would have literally fed him to the Lions at halftime. They would have set up a fence around the perimeter, thrown some lines out there, and said, Zach Wilson, run until you get tired, and then let's see what happens. And the crowd would have cheered like they were watching Gladiator. I don't know what was going on with Mahomes. He had a 3rd interception. And Breech, I'll get your thoughts on this. Number one, did Robert Saleh have a beef with the defensive holding call in quotation marks against Sauce Gardner that kept that drive alive late in the game? I think Patrick scrambled for a 3rd and 20 that should have he threw the ball. That's what happened. The interception was overturned. The 3rd and 20 became 1st and 5, first down, excuse me. And then they ran the clock out and yada, yada, yada. So did Robert Saleh have a beef? Number one. And number two, any planet where we're concerned about Patrick Mahomes, are you taking the Will Brinson week 1 approach with Josh Allen that everything's fine?
I'm taking the Will Brinson approach. I would never show any concern for Patrick Mahomes after one game where he throws multiple interceptions. He has these games for whatever reason. It's just like he thinks during the week, we're playing the Jets. I don't need studying film. I'm just going to go in there and wing it, and we'll see what happens. We saw in 2021, he had 3 games where he threw multiple interceptions. Last season, he had 2 games where he threw multiple interceptions, regular season games. And so this isn't out of the norm for this to happen to him 2 or 3 times a season. It's just how he plays. Sometimes he goes a little more gunslinger than I'm sure Andy Reid would like. And I mentioned it in Slack that it looked like he was short-arming a couple of his throws where they just weren't getting.
He did. He's short-arming.
He didn't. They weren't going to where he wanted them to go. And he definitely looked a little frustrated each time they happened. So I don't think the interceptions are a big deal. Now, if he throws 2 interceptions next week and then the week after that and doesn't 3 straight games, and he does it against good teams who can actually take advantage of it, because if Mahomes doesn't throw those interceptions, they go up 24-0, and this probably ends up being a blowout. So that definitely kept the Jets in the game. So yeah, I'm not too concerned.
He's only got one game this year without an interception, which is a little surprising for Mahomes. I think I mentioned this throughout the week, and I just sort of wonder if it was the case because the balls that he had the interceptions on were like those touch throws where you need to put enough arc on him, and he didn't really step into him at all. I sort of wonder if he was trying to be more armsy during this game because he had that banged up ankle from last week, and they're on that turf in MetLife Stadium. There's just been devastatingly bad for injuries. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything, to back that up. I just sort of wonder if maybe he was trying to make sure not to expose that ankle, or if he had maybe more tape on the ankle, something like that. And just like, there was just very uncharacteristic of him to short those touch throws as much as he did on both of those.
Breech didn't answer the question, so I'll ask you. Robert Saleh have a right to be upset, number one, and number two, any concern about these Chiefs?
Yeah, I think he had a right to be upset. It was pretty physical all game. That was like there was a holding call on either the offense or defense 4 straight plays, which is just really frustrating. Even if like there was one when Mahomes had that 25-yard run where
Trey
he picked
Smith,
up
the guard, got called for holding.
Yep. Just a lot of just a lot of laundry there at the end of that game. And so I think, if you're Robert Saleh, it's a close game. You storm back from down 17-0 with Zach Wilson at quarterback and the defending Super Bowl champions in your house. And, the ball gets picked off. The flag comes in late. They it's for holding. And it's like, I mean, technically by the letter of the law, you could probably call it for holding.
It was a pretty bad hold. It was a pretty.
I felt like upon review, it was closer than it was. And then the Trey Smith penalty that Brinson just mentioned, that was iffy too. So who knows? At the end of the day, I get Robert Saleh being angry. That's not why they lost. Zach Wilson can't catch a snap. And let's be honest, Zach Wilson played out of his mind by Zach Wilson standards. So he stayed off the Joe Flacco return for at least another week.
If Zach Wilson plays like, Robert Saleh said it after the game. If Zach Wilson plays like that the rest of the year, we'll win a lot of football games. And he's not wrong. Like the Jets will be, although I do think that like as good as the Jets defense is, the Jets themselves and like most Jets fans have drastically overrated how good this defense is.
Well, it didn't help that the Chiefs came out and ran the ball all over the Jets, and the defense did nothing. And then Zach Wilson got hot, and by that point, they were down 17-0 tied at 2020, and then the fumble happened. But, yeah, I mean, you have to feel great about Zach Wilson. I don't know if they're going to win a bunch of games. Like 4 feels like if he plays like that, that's a good number.
I think he'd like 6 or 7 if he plays like that.
That feels. Where are you on that, Breech? 7 too high, too low?
If Zach Wilson puts together.
Yeah, no, we got it. But
I'm just saying, like, let's say how many games they have left? What, 13? If he puts together 10 games like that, I think they win 7 of them.
Hey boy, that seems rich.
Well, I think
we win 6 more games.
If you lose to Denver, though, there was some speculation. Yeah, there's some speculation going into this week that the defense was a little bit frustrated with Wilson's playing. And if you go out to Denver and lose to them, that could rekindle that frustration, and that might be enough. So maybe you make the switch to the bye, which is in 2 weeks.
All right. Speaking of frustration,
Producer
Harry, let's roll the tape, and then we'll come back on the other side if Jamar Chase has some words.
I'm open. I'm always excuse my profanity. I'm sorry.
Richie is always open. And my point is that unless he's pass blocking, and that was Jamar Chase, of course, talking about his frustration with the Bengals offense, which is looked like the Steelers offense on drugs. I mean, that's how bad they are playing. You cannot go into Tennessee and play that way against a Titans team where Ryan Tannehill is perpetually on the ropes, and yet they did. So I'll ask you first about Jamar Chase's comments. I understand the frustration. I don't take anything away from it other than he's angry, and understandably so. But then I want to hear about your medical prognosis, and you are a medical doctor on the Pick Six podcast. Nowhere else. So don't ask for medical advice if you see Breech out in the street. But your medical diagnosis on Joe Burrow's calf, should he be on the shelf? And did that have anything to do with his spectacularly crappy play today?
Look, we both know that I went online and paid $89 for a medical degree. So I am a doctor, Wilson. Thank you. Look, I am highly concerned. And, I wrote that story before the Monday night game about how they should maybe think about put Joe Burrow on injured reserve, let him sit out for 4 weeks, and let the calf heal. They did not do that. This was a product of that. Yes, you beat the Rams. Then you asked your quarterback, who was hobbled with a bad calf, to turn around on a short week, play in a road game against a team with a pretty ferocious pass rush. And the thing is, Joe Burrow, he can't escape. He is back there. He's immobile. It is like his feet are glued to the ground. This isn't Joe Burrow of last year who can escape and make plays in situations like that. If the offensive line, if a defensive lineman blows by the offensive line, Burrow's done. There's nothing for him to do. It's just the play's over, and the Bengals aren't going to do anything. And that was happening all day. This wasn't a situation where Burrow got sacked 14 times. He only got sacked 3 times. But
yeah, he got hit. He got hit like 12 times though.
Right, but he got hit a bunch because the Titans were just in his face the entire game. And this is what's going to happen anytime they play a team with a good pass rush. So what do you do when they played the 49ers in 3 weeks? If Burrow's calf isn't better by then, thank God it's out of a bye, so maybe he can survive. But that team is going to just beat them up. Then they play the Bills, who will have Von Miller back. That team is going to beat up their offense. So it's just very worrisome knowing that it's hard to see this offense improving much as long as Burrow is hobbled. And unless that thing magically gets fixed during their bye, which is 2 weeks from now, in week 7.
Disrespecting you on YouTube, Breech.
Yeah, it is tough. And Harry's popping up here with the fewest points scored through 4 games in Bengals history. And this is one of the worst.
And I mean, but the Bengals, like, when you talk about history of being terrible, the Bengals have a really long history of being really terrible. I mean, there was this little stretch with Andrew Gregory Dalton, your boy, where they were good. And then you have Carson Palmer, where they were good. And then, of course, Boomer, our colleague. And now you have Burrow. But, like, the Bengals were the laughingstock of the league for a long, long time.
For a decade.
What's that?
For a decade, from 1992 to 2002.
Right. So when you're talking about worst starts in Bengals history scoring-wise, that's pretty bad.
So, Brinson, let me ask you this. And I don't know how Breech feels about it, but he's a doctor, so we'll find out in a second. But do you get the sense, just on the outside looking in, that Zach Wilson needs to take control and tell Joe Burrow, you're not playing no matter what? Zach Taylor. Who did I say?
Zach Wilson.
No, Zach Wilson should definitely call him too. So Zach Taylor take control and say, you're not playing in much the same way that Mike Shanahan did not with RG3 back in the day. RG3 got hurt his rookie season, had that great rookie season, never played at the same level. Hold on.
But by the way,
before Brinson answers that, I just say Zach Taylor's part of the problem. He has Joe Burrow out there when it's 27-3 in the fourth quarter. Like, your quarterback's already banged up, man. put him on the sideline, put him on ice. There's no reason for him to take these hits. It was just, I was literally pulling out my hair.
Yeah.
With Joe Burrow in the fourth quarter.
If you start like, it was like Paul Daner Jr., a friend of the podcast, and one of our buddies who covers the Bengals for The Athletic. He's like, he's like, what is happening here? This is insane.
So let me ask you then, what is your plan with Joe Burrow then? I guess that's
so a couple of things. One, I don't know if I was filling up my water in my wine when the Jamar Chase thing played. Did you guys talk about how the context for that, where it's like he's not. He like if you listen to the full quotes that Jamar Chase gave, this was not like him like talking smack about Joe Burrow or anything. Like he wasn't.
No,
like,
we took it as him being frustrated with the whole.
No, but it was. I don't think it was nearly as bad as it was. But yeah, I'm saying like that. That's just the context of it. I was digging into it a little bit deeper. Wanted to point that out so Jamar Chase doesn't get thrown under the bus. But that quote will be the one that pops up.
Yeah.
My plan for Burrow is pretty easy. You're not playing again until after the bye. Sit him down, try and beat the Cardinals and the Seahawks without Burrow, get him healthy, because we talked about this before the season. The Bengals were one of the teams in the NFL, the Bengals and the Chiefs and the Bills, and I guess we didn't thinking about the Niners, but they would probably qualify. The Eagles, maybe. It's like anything less than a Super Bowl win is a disappointing season.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They're not going to the playoffs. Breech, what's their playoff percentage chance according to you?
I mean, I'm not ready to go that far, but I think as far as benching him until after the bye, I think that ship has sailed, because if you were going to do it, you need to do it.
He's hurt
last week before the Rams game. But here's the thing: is if you are a Bengals fan,
or do it this week before we beat the Rams and be like, all right, we're gonna try and go 2-1 without Burrow until the bye, and then get him a month where he's getting healthy.
Right, but now that you've played him here, because if you bench Burrow right here and you lose your next two games, you go 1-3, then you wasted it. You should have done it because 0-4, 1-3 doesn't make a difference. You let him sit. If you had let him sit those 4 weeks,
right. You'd be 1-5. You'd be done anyway.
No,
at this point, the Bengals.
Let me ask you this, Breech.
Yes.
If you're thinking long term about Joe Burrow's health, yes, you may not go to the playoffs this year, but at least he will be able to walk down the street in preparation for next year. But you're going to get him beat all to hell because on some 5% chance that you make the playoffs, you're willing to take that risk?
Well, if I'm thinking like Zach Taylor, who again had this guy in the fourth quarter, then yes, I'm absolutely willing to take this risk. And here's the thing. Here's what I think the Bengals thought process is that if you have Joe Burrow at 80%, 85%, 75%, whatever he's at right now, I think they can probably beat the Cardinals. And who knows if they can. The Cardinals have been frisky. Yeah, that's not by any means a lock. And I think they can beat the Seahawks at home in a 10 a.m. game on Seattle's body clock in Cincinnati. And if you win those games, then you're probably not going to win without Burrow. And so if you just split those games with Burrow and get 2 weeks off, that's it. That's your option. So you have to keep playing them.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Because it's like if you have to you look at these games and you say, okay, we have at Arizona, Seattle at home before the bye, and then at San Francisco, Buffalo at home after the bye. If you sit Burrow until the bye, you lose. You go 1-1 even with you get lucky, you go 1-1, and then you lose with Burrow out of the bye against San Francisco and Buffalo. Like it's over.
I'm putting him on the bench. Because I care about his well-being. I don't know if you're Duke Tobin, the general manager, you have to tell Zach Taylor to bench him, or maybe Duke's in on. I don't know, but it feels like to me. And Mike Brown is known as being cheap. Is that correct, Breech?
He does have
frugal.
A reputation. Not yet for being frugal. It hasn't been as bad.
Do you think
he just gave the guy a $275 million contract? A cheap person doesn't do that, Ryan.
My point is this: if you want to pay someone $55 million a year, do you want them out there taking hit after hit for no clear reason?
No.
If you're cheap and want to avoid the contract, sure.
But there's a clear reason, because if you're going to save your season, you've got to win one of these next two games.
Over.
It is not over. That's ridiculous.
All right, 10 seconds. Brinson, anything take from the Titans? You feel good about them at all, as in terms of their competitiveness in that division?
I think the AFC South is wide. I think there's a chance we get two teams in the playoffs from the AFC South. There you go. That's a hot take. Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Houston all have had these moments where they've looked pretty decent, We have the Jets who lose Rodgers. The Bengals are 1-3 because Burrow's been banged up. All this different stuff is happening in the AFC that's really kind of opening up one of these playoff spots, these wildcard spots for a team that we certainly didn't think had a chance of getting in. And I think it might be somebody from the AFC South because like Jacksonville's looked good, but they looked bad. The Colts have looked really good at various points in time and could easily be 3-1. And then you have the Titans who offensively aren't exactly sexy, but they are the definition of a Mike Vrabel team.
I don't even know. If
yeah, and real quick,
yeah,
to Brinson's point, this was like a Vrabel fantasy game where his defense beat up the other quarterback. Derrick Henry goes for over 100 yards, and every week he crosses his fingers, hoping Ryan Tannehill will have a huge game. And Tannehill played lights out. And if Tannehill plays well, this team's good. So it really hinges on whether or not
you got
Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had more passing touchdowns than Joe Burrow.
You got Derrick Henry doing the Tim Tebow jump touchdown. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the best quarterback on the best team in the AFC South. Right after this.
First place I learned about death was a pet cemetery. Dead things buried in that land would come back as something else. Something's wrong. Continue.
He needs time to adjust.
Something's talking to him.
Breathe on.
My goodness. Welcome back, fellas, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching, hold on. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a old thumbs up. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get them. What is it, Brinson?
You would be surprised to find out that on Wednesday's show with Leger Duzable and Brady Quinn and myself, that all three of us hate scary movies.
That is surprising.
October is kind of petrifying for me because you are getting nonstop scary movie ads, and I really don't like scary movies. Just not a big fan.
Breech, where are you?
Brinson, Baby's Day Out isn't that scary. I don't know why.
All right, you know what is scary, but in a good way? How good the Houston Texans are playing with DeMeco Ryans, first-year head coach, and C.J. Stroud, rookie quarterback, taken second overall. And there was a conversation in the weeks and months leading to the draft that the Texans wanted Bryce Young, and if Bryce Young wasn't going to be there too, and it looked pretty clear after a while that he wasn't, that they might take Will Anderson. They ended up doing both. Got Will Anderson at 3 after trading back up, and then took CJ at number 2. So I think the real winner here is Lovie Smith for winning that meaningless game last year that allowed the Texans to no longer be the number 1 overall seed because they would have taken Bryce. And by virtue of that fact, they got CJ is exactly the quarterback they needed. He has been absolutely balling out. He has been so much fun to watch. And I'll tell you a quick story. So obviously I do the draft podcast with my buddy Rick Spielman with the first pick. And I was asking him about this. The S2 test came out, and you remember that CJ Stroud failed it according to the reports. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to a scout about this, and he said, here's the thing. Sometimes with those tests, it's at the end of a long day. The player may not know how serious it is you're supposed to take it. They've been working out for a team. They've been taking other, tests that measure your cognitive ability to do X, Y, and Z. And who knows? He may have just been an off day for him. Watching him play, Breech, you would have no idea that he failed any test because he is playing at another level. He's playing way better than any of the rookie quarterbacks. He's playing better than most of the second-year quarterbacks, maybe all of them. Certainly the one he faced today in Kenny Pickett. All right, what's the ceiling on the Texans, Breech? It starts with C.J. Stroud.
They can win the division. I mean, this is one
Here we go. I said that before the season.
No, again, Brinson. All three of us mentioned on the Pick Six podcast, the Texans were plus 900, and we had mentioned in August that this was the perfect team to sprinkle on because it felt like the AFC South was going to be a wide open unless you were someone who believed in Jacksonville, which I don't think any of us were completely on the Jags bandwagon. It just felt like something that, look, DeMeco Ryans built this team. They brought in all these free agent acquisitions. They had a pretty solid roster. It was going to come down to whether they could get good quarterback play. And for me, this was the game that convinced me that CJ Stroud is good because watching him last week, it was like, Jacksonville's defense is okay. He played okay against the Colts. He looked pretty good. And then the Ravens in week 1, they lost by 2 touchdowns. It was a close game, and it was his first game ever, so you didn't have high expectations. But for him to go out there and throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, like give this man Rookie of the Year right now. That was an unbelievable performance. Ryan, how many tears did you shed watching CJ Stroud, knowing that he's already better than Kenny Pickett, that the Texans have a better or more set at quarterback than the Steelers, and that really, I mean, this is his fourth game. The fourth game. He's doing this stuff in his fourth game, is picking apart the Steelers defense. So Brinson seems like rookie their front runner, obvious, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And remember, with the
Brinson, sorry, what was his number coming into the year for rookie year? Do you remember?
They were all the quarterbacks were under 10-1.
Okay.
So Bryce Young was like Bijan was like plus 275.
Oh,
Bryce Young was 4-1. CJ Stroud was 5-1, and Richardson was 9-1, I belse. The thing, like, honestly, like I'll take the egg on the face for this one. I mean, I got off of Houston because I felt like ownership sort of forced them to move back up and take CJ Stroud. But you saw that stat, most attempts to start a career without throwing an interception. Like, he's playing really well. I don't know if you guys saw the clip where he was talking about Texans fans and how he's like, look, the Steelers rolled in here. They kind of took over the stadium. They were taking over the city. We shipped them out of here, pissed off. And he's like a Texas fan. He's like, I want you. He's like, I take it personally. I want you guys to walk around during the week proud to have on your Texans gear. I don't know. It's like I just wasn't in on CJ Stroud coming into the draft. Didn't love where he landed, and I just didn't love the way that it worked out with him giving up their future first round pick.
That was for Will Anderson. That wasn't for CJ.
Well, right, but it was basically, I mean, they were going to take Will Anderson. There was a very clear compromise between the ownership and the front office and the coaching staff where they're like, we want Will Anderson, so they traded back up for him. Regardless,
I don't think that's how it worked. But go ahead.
That is how it worked. I mean, why do you not think that?
Just saying.
I mean, back it up with info rather than just being dismissive.
I talked to people that said that's not how it worked. I mean, they like
people say that.
Okay,
people say it both ways. Either way, it's worked out. The decision to take CJ Stroud where they did. Now, whether or not like they're winning game, they've won games. They've already won like more games than I think. Like what they won like the year before. They look like a team that's going to win some games this year and probably not end up sacrificing a top 5 pick, which is what the Panthers look like.
Right, and I think that's the takeaway. And Will Anderson has played pretty well. He hasn't flashed certainly at the level of CJ Stroud, and he's going to have to continue to ball out. But they're still going to have a first round pick, so they have that in their bag, and that probably was part of their math when they traded up to come back and get Will Anderson. The other thing. Like I like CJ coming out a lot, and I liked him more the more we talked to him, and we talked to him a couple times during the draft process. And he's a sharp dude, came from a tough background and overcame a lot, and you pull for those guys. And then he just balled out. And the other thing that one of the concerns, quotation marks, was that at Ohio State he played behind basically 15 first round picks as offensive lineman. So okay, what's he going to do when there's guys flying around him nonstop? Well, on Sunday against the Steelers, Laramie Tunsil was out. Juice Scruggs, the center they drafted, has been out all season. Titus Howard's been out all season. 2 other guys that were like second and third round pick, second and third teamers were out Sunday as well. 0 sacks the last 2 games. And he is absolutely dealing. Brinson, you mentioned no interceptions, the longest streak by a rookie to start the season. And he continues to make plays like he's a savvy veteran. And I'm not just talking about throwing to guys that are wide ass open. He is throwing with the type of anticipation that you want your quarterback to do and that Kenny Pickett doesn't do on a semi-regular basis. And it just sort of reinforces how hard it is to get the quarterback thing right. And when you do, it solves a ton of problems. Let me ask you this, and whoever raises their hand first can answer this question. I think we're at a point when it comes to hiring head coaches that you have to go offense. And the exceptions are rare. And the exceptions are incredible motivators and leaders. So Tomlin, Sean McDermott, Bill Belichick historically has done it. Pete Carroll's a good one, although he struggled his first time around with the Patriots. And I think D'Amico Ryans is certainly in that conversation, whereas someone like Matt Eberflus is not in that conversation. Brandon Staley, up for debate. They keep finding crazy ways to win football games. But any pushback on that agreement, or what are you doing?
No, I mean, I think generally, raise my hand. I think generally speaking, like that's probably the philosophy that I adhere to. If I'm looking offense first, but like defense, if you can find a smart defensive-minded head coach who operates in that CEO role and can bring in good offensive coordinators, that's great. I think Dan Quinn would maybe even qualify. He took the Falcons to the Super Bowl. He also had Kyle Shanahan as his offensive coordinator. And the problem with going defense is that with the head coach is inherently you cannot control whether or not your head coach is able to keep Like whether or not you're able to keep the offensive coordinator in place, right? Because the offensive coordinator, if he's really good, is eventually going to move on. Whereas if you have the offensive head coach, you keep him in place because you have him in your job and he's doing well.
Well, that's not entirely true because if you're Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada will be there for the next 50 years if you want him there for the next 50 years.
Well, yeah.
Wilson, would you see Matt Canada
Vrabel qualifies too. Good call.
Go ahead, Breech.
Would you like to see Matt Canada shipped off to Canada?
No, that's not far enough. All right, CJ Stroud. Breech thinks you're going to win the division. I sort of agree with that. All right, next up.
Oh, wait, real quick. The odds right now. The Texans are still the long shot, plus 475. Colts plus 450. Titans plus 210. Jags plus 145. I'm going to sprinkle.
Without looking, who has the best point differential in the list? List them in order of best point differential to worst point differential in the AFC South.
Texans are 1.
Yep. Texans are 1 at plus 17.
The Titans are 2 after whooping up on the Bengals. The Jaguars are last, and then the Colts are 3rd.
The Jaguars and Colts are tied at -2.
Oh, that was a Breech trick question.
That was a Breech.
Get out of here, Brinson.
All right. Speaking of minuses, let's move to Chicago, a team that Justin Fields played the game of his life.
I mean,
half of his life.
For 40 minutes. And then he played.
Well, I was saying Breech. The game of his life was probably that playoff game against Georgia. But yes.
The game of his professional life for 40 minutes. And then he played like the Justin Fields we've seen. I'm still not sure if it's entirely his fault. And I was talking to our buddy Joe Musso about this. He was a Bears fan. I would take Justin Fields over Zach Wilson and Kenny Pickett, but it's like half a dozen to 1 at this point. But here's the thing. And Breech, you're quite familiar with perennial losers in Cincinnati. So do you think the Bears are playing, in Brinson's words, 40 chess because they're going to have the 1st overall pick and the 2nd overall pick, which could mean Caleb Williams out of USC, Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State coming to Chicago? You got to move on from the coaching staff, I would imagine. Who knows? We'll see what Ryan Poles decides to do. And I put this question to Joe Musso, again, Bears fan, our coworker. I said, what if Caleb and Marvin both say we're not coming to Chicago? And Musso's response was, that's not how it works. So no matter what, you're coming to Chicago. What do you think about those plans, Breech?
Well, here's the problem is that even if the Bears are playing 4D chess and they get the board set up how they want, they're the team that would accidentally spill gasoline on the board and set it on fire, and they don't even get to take advantage of how well they played 4D chess. Because even if they get the first 2 picks in the draft, which just be absolutely crazy because they have the Panthers pick and they have the top 2 picks right now if the season ended today. If you're a Bears fan, are you even comfortable with the idea of your front office having the first 2 picks after all the draft day debauchery that you've gone through over the past few years? The team that traded up for Mitchell Trubisky.
Sorry, real quick. They traded down 1 spot to get Darnell Wright instead of taking Jalen Carter this draft too.
So you're looking at all these just bizarre mistakes that they're making, and now you're going to trust them with the top 2 picks? No, that would make me completely uncomfortable if I was a Bears fan. So I do not think the front office is smart enough to play this type of 4D chess. So I'm going to say no, the Bears are not tanking yet. Although if they lose a few more games, I'm sure they're just going to say, all right, let's just try and get the top 2 picks. Let's tank.
Brinson, I don't think they're tanking. I just think they're terrible.
Well, it's also you don't really like you can't tank for both picks because you don't have to you can't make the Panthers lose games. The Panthers are just a bad football team.
They don't need help.
Yeah, I don't think the Bears are tanking. I think there's too much pressure on honestly, there's too much pressure on Matt Eberflus for his job for them to tank. And
they're not tanking, but they're not good. That's all I'm saying. They're a terrible football team.
I actually don't know. I don't know for sure that Ryan Poles would fire Matt Eberflus if they ended up with the 1st overall pick.
Well, here's what happens. We talk about this all the time. Everyone comes in with the best intentions, and then it becomes Game of Thrones.
That is true.
So you can love Matt Eberflus as a person, but they continue to make questionable play calls. For the life of me, they did it twice on Sunday that I counted. I didn't watch the game. I was looking at a bunch of other things on Sunday, of course. So they have Justin Herbert. Is there a better athlete at quarterback than Justin Herbert? Maybe Anthony Richardson? It doesn't matter.
Fields.
Patrick Mahomes.
Justin Fields. Yeah, sorry. So Justin Fields, Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's a good athlete with now 9 fingers. So again, we'll talk about that in a second. But Justin Fields, on 4th down, they had Cole Kmet come in motion and get under center and do the Travis Kelce sneak. Cole Kmet is not Travis Kelce, and you have Justin Fields. At the end of the game, they had 4th and 1, and they had Justin Fields in the shotgun hand off to Khalil Herbert. Like, these stupid type of decisions are what lose you games.
4th and 1 shotgun calls drive me insane.
with Justin Fields. So I think that Matt Eberflus's job is extremely, what's the word? Tenuous.
I think it's also possible that they are fully aware that Justin Fields is not this regime's guy. Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles did not draft Justin Fields. In fact, remember we talked about coming into last year. It was like, it kind of felt like the Bears were trying to submarine Justin Fields' success by not giving him any help on the offensive line, not giving him any help at receiver.
Well, they did those things though.
They did this offseason, yeah, and it's still it's like the offensive line is it's not good.
It's bad.
It is improved, right? But I mean that's
it's not elite.
Right. That's like saying like this piece of like slightly rotten fruit is better than the piece of completely rotten fruit I had before.
But it doesn't matter what you think about Justin Fields if you have the first overall pick because you're taking Caleb no matter what.
By the way, do you remember the last time an NFL team had the first 2 picks in the NFL draft?
I feel like I looked that up.
Cleveland?
Feels like a Cleveland thing. Is it Cleveland?
I think it's Indianapolis.
Oh, you didn't know? I thought you knew.
I thought it was Indianapolis. I thought it was Indianapolis in 1992.
Okay.
That could be right.
They took Steve
Entman
and Quentin Coryatt.
Okay. All right.
I remember reading that sports. I remember because the Bengals had a bunch of like first overall. The Bengals had like Kijana and Big Daddy Dan Wilkinson.
All right. So the Bears are still terrible. I think they're the worst team in football. They beat the second worst team in football. Any upside other than a win for the Broncos here because they could have gotten their doors blown off.
I think it's fascinating how the narrative surrounding this game flips so quickly. It went from maybe Justin Fields is like
4 touchdowns in the first half.
I know. Maybe it went from Justin Fields like being like I was like Justin Fields might like be turning it on, might be becoming the guy. And Denver is in deep trouble, and Russ, and now it's like the only thing that we're really talking about is the Bears and those top 2 picks that they're chasing.
So again, any thoughts on the Broncos?
I think Sean Payton would have had to fire his whole defensive staff if they had lost to the Bears. So it's a good thing for them they didn't. But they have the Jets next week, so maybe they can start piling up a couple wins. It's a winnable game for them.
Where's that game?
That game is at Empower Field at Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado.
All right, the wins over Wilson line is -1.5. Denver.
God, I'm taking
the actual line for that game is
might be more than that because it's the elevation, but I feel like that's the right line. Who are you taking at -1.5?
Broncos -2.5. Juice
Okay.
-115.
All right,
with a total of 41. Ew.
I sort of. Here's the thing to come back to Brinson's point earlier. If Zach Wilson plays like he did on Sunday night, the Jets are winning that football game.
Absolutely.
All right. Onward and upward, fellas. Go ahead, Breech. You got something else?
Zach Wilson would never play like that again.
I think that's true.
Once in a lifetime.
All right. I'm just reading this headline for the first time from producer Harry. So this is going to be a fun one here. These are words I never thought I would read out loud. Baker Mayfield is making the Browns wish he never left. And that's not wrong because Baker's been balling out. Dorian Thompson-Robinson started for the Browns today because Deshaun Watson was injured. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who had a great preseason, played like his name was Mac Jones, but that's a conversation for later. The Bucs are 3-1. The Browns are 2-2. Watson and DRT, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, are not what they were advertised. And what's more, Brinson, are the Baker Mayfields winning the NFC South?
Yeah, I think the Falcons can still get involved with it, and wouldn't be shocked if the Saints are in the mix there too. The Panthers look like total crap, but the Buccaneers look like the best team in the NFC South by a pretty wide margin. I think you actually make the case that the Bucs should give a little call to Indianapolis about Jonathan Taylor.
No, you're fine. Why do you need Jonathan Taylor?
Because you don't have a great running game, and he would help Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, but I mean, is that worth the price of poker, as the kids say?
I don't know if it's like a 3rd round pick, sure.
That's okay. I'll talk about that, but I don't want anything. And then you got to pay him. I don't know what their salary cap situation. I don't hate it, but I would just have to think.
I'm just saying, like, I think before
I'm the guy, by the way, who hated the Christian McCaffrey trade. So take that for what it's worth.
Yes, I did watch the London game. Yes, Desmond Ridder's a problem. The Falcons are an issue. I mean, the Bucs are 3-1. Atlanta and New Orleans are both 2-2. The Panthers obviously 0-4. Yeah, I mean, the Falcons and Saints are going to find ways to win some ugly close games.
Let me just ask you this though: despite the records, if you were just watching the games, not knowing the score,
The Bucs
would
would
be like
the best team.
exactly. That's my point.
Yeah. No, and look, I mean, I think there was a case to be made when the Browns released Baker. They traded him.
I think they released him, and then he signed with the Rams. I think I'm just.
They went to the Panthers first.
Cool enough.
Or you go to the Rams.
See, who knows? I think it
He's
doesn't
on the
matter.
Rams. Finished the season with the Rams last season because he played in the Christmas game.
The Browns traded him to the Panthers, and then the Panthers cut him when they benched him, so that way he could sign with somebody else, and then he went to Los Angeles, and then he finished the season with the Rams and signed with the Bucs. Like Baker was having these like every other years he was playing well, and then like Cleveland wanted to move on. Cleveland got this like their bee in their bonnet about getting Deshaun Watson, and you knew they weren't going to keep Baker around if they had Deshaun Watson. Like,
Well, Baker was injured for a good chunk of his final season with the team, and they kind of wanted him to play through it, and he was not anywhere near 100% and didn't
They
play
wouldn't
that
run
well.
the ball with Nick Chubb, and they kept throwing the ball and trying to get him killed.
And then they used that as an excuse to get rid of him.
Right.
But I mean, the point being is like Baker's a former first overall pick who's played some good football at times, and if you have the right stuff, like he's sort of like in the same vein as like a Kirk Cousins style, where if you have a good running game, a decent running game around him, a good offensive line,
the running game stinks.
I didn't say it stinks. I just said you could upgrade, and they haven't. It's been fine.
I don't think anyone thought that they were going to be good on this podcast, right?
No, everyone thought that I said they were in the hunt for the number one pick.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that we were all on the same page there.
Yeah.
Breech, who are you picking to win the division?
I am picking maybe the Buccaneers.
Why are you hesitating?
They win so sloppily. I haven't been wowed by them. Like I feel like today felt more like the Saints were dumb for trotting Derek Carr out there, even though he missed the entire week of practice. Like just let Jameis Winston play or snap at the
How much
taste
do you
of
hate
hell.
Jameis Winston?
Run a wildcat with Alvin Kamara, who was in his first game back.
I think Derek Carr went to Dennis Allen was like, and Derek Carr's worried he would lose his job if Jameis Winston won the game.
Why? He saw Jameis last week not play great. I don't think they gave us.
I mean, so the Bucs snuck by the Vikings, they manhandled the Bears, and they got manhandled by the Eagles, and then they beat the Saints team. That I really think the Saints team is overrated. Like I know I said that they'll be in the mix too. I don't think anybody's going to run away with the NFC South. Is my point. The Saints haven't like played good on offense once this year. The defense has been good, but it's like have they really played? They played Tampa.
Where are you on the Saints? Because I'm not clear based on the things you've said the last 5 minutes.
I think the Saints are bad. They played the Titans, Panthers, the Packers.
Wait. They only beat the Titans because Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions, and they still only won by 1 point.
And they barely beat the Panthers.
Bad Panthers team. They blew a 17-0 lead to the Packers
in the fourth quarter.
Jordan Love played horrible in the first half. And then
all right, that's enough talk about Baker. We get it.
I don't think.
I know. We get it. We
need to wear our Baker Mayfield dangerous shirts every time Baker and the Bucs win.
Harry wants us to take a break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk about another awesome team in the NFC South. Brinson's team, best record in the NFL. What's a bold prediction?
The Falcons.
Right after the break.
There's no Belichickery here.
When Sunday football isn't enough.
Dislike that take.
Great take.
That other pregame show will put you over the tops.
I'm all in. Let's go viral here.
Every Sunday, all the insight you need on CBS Sports Network.
Brinson, let's go viral here. Make your case. Desmond Ridder, is he holding the Falcons back, or is he the future of the franchise?
I think that
next question.
I think that I stand by my Falcons take, which is that Arthur Smith created a poor man's version of Mike Vrabel's Tennessee Titans, and Desmond Ridder is playing like a homeless man's version of Ryan Tannehill.
That's not where you want to be. Why do they not give the ball to Kyle Pitts and Drake London consistently?
It is very odd how they play offense. I will.
Unless you are in London, Breech, that's the only time you throw to Drake London. Is that the rule? Where do they have to go to? Where's Pittsville where you can throw the ball to Kyle Pitts?
Pittsburgh. How about that?
That was pretty good.
Thank you.
So,
this is trouble.
You should
This
be
is definitely
shouting us on for that.
I'd be a little worried if I'm the Falcons.
They have 13 points the last 2 weeks against the Lions and Jaguars.
Would anyone have? They played at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time in England. Our buddy Johnny, who paid to talk to us for some reason on the podcast a few years ago for a great cause, of course, St. Jude's. He texted me a few times. He was at the game, and he said he was getting angry watching Desmond Ridder play in the stands. Breech.
Well, real quick, there was the clip
Yeah.
that went viral where Desmond Ridder tried to fist bump or high five Mack Hollins after a play, and he was like, "Yeah, no, I don't like you at all." And please get away from me right now.
All right, well, let me put this out there. At halftime, they were getting beat pretty soundly. Any thought, if you're Arthur Smith, about turning to Taylor Heineke?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would. If he wasn't having that thought, then he needs to stay in London until he starts having that thought. Because if I am Arthur Smith, and this is kind of where we heard with the Jets last week, where the defense is getting frustrated with the fact that the offense is not doing anything. If I'm watching the first half of this game and I see my quarterback literally throw interceptions on consecutive plays, he throws a pick six, turns around, gets the ball back, and then proceeds to throw another interception. And effectively, that was the game. It just felt like it was over at that point. And Desmond Ridder, it just seems like the game's too fast for him. It doesn't seem like he's getting any better. I would absolutely give Taylor Heineke a shot. I don't think you have anything to lose. And I think that the way this roster's built, it's if we have just an average, a slightly above average quarterback, he doesn't have to be good or even great. We can win. And so if I'm the Falcons, I am thinking about it. You can't wait till you're by because it's not till November. It's one of those things where Arthur Smith is going to have to say, you know what, maybe Taylor Heineke does give us the best chance to win.
Brinson, let me ask you this. If you do bench Desmond Ridder, it's sort of hard to go back to him as a second-year quarterback, where he is mentally and all that. Are you doing that? Are you sticking with Des Ridder? Because, as you've said, this division is wide open, and you have Bijan, you have Pitts, you have Drake London, and they are not being utilized outside of Bijan. And this offense is not.
Was Bijan 6th overall?
He was 8th.
He was 8th. Drake London was 8th, and Kyle Pitts was 4th overall. And it's like you have this. It's pretty wild to have this Stone Age offense, like where you.
Oh wait, it's supposed to be the Titans offense. So what's going on?
Well, but the Titans didn't invest a first round pick in. Like,
It doesn't matter. You can still run that offense and have some success.
4th, 8th, and 8th, dude. That's when you want you want Andy Reid coaching your team when you have that kind of talent on that offense.
Didn't you just say that Arthur Smith is running the Titans Tannehill offense?
Yeah,
but he's doing it way less efficiently than Ryan Tannehill is currently doing it. So you can have success running that offense with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, but they're not running that scout team. It feels like watching them play.
Yeah. I mean, it's no, I do think that the Jaguars, I think the Jaguars are, they probably had their best game of the year defensively.
Falcons,
I don't know. It's hard to, so the Falcons looked so good in week 1 against the Panthers. They had that great comeback.
Yeah. You answered the own question there.
Well, they had a great comeback against the Packers. And then it's like the Lions and Jaguars, maybe the Lions and Jaguars are just good.
I mean, you saw Desmond Ridder throw to 2 people that were wearing the exact opposite color uniforms. I don't know if that has to do with being good.
Even kids watching the Toy Story broadcast were laughing.
All right, so look, here's the deal with the Falcons upcoming schedule. And again, this is why I picked the Falcons are the most wins in the NFL because this schedule is a joke. Now the Texans have played well.
Yeah, it's not a joke now.
Texans at home, Commanders at home, at Buccaneers, at Titans, Vikings at home, at Cardinals.
They might win 2 of those games.
Maybe.
Let's see how they do the next 2 weeks before we really panic on benching Ridder.
Let me ask you this, and this will be a big determinant in how I answer the second part of this question. Where are the next 2 games played?
Home.
Well, that's great news because Des Ridder is 4-0 at home and 0-4 anywhere but home. So I suggest they play the game in his living room and try to petition the other game.
Well, let me ask you this, Brinson. If the Texans beat the Falcons and the Texans are held to if the Falcons are held to single-digit points,
you're starting Taylor Heineke in a revenge game against Washington.
Okay, there you go. Boom, that's what I wanted to hear.
Put it on the board.
Yeah, right. If single digits, because they score, Drake London. Did we ever find out the answer to that trivia question about Drake London?
Yeah, Drake London in London.
Drake London scored a touchdown in London, becoming the 7th player in NFL history to score a touchdown in the city of that shares with his last name. Breech found out Lamar Houston.
Lamar Houston scored a touchdown in Houston when he returned a fumble for a touchdown Ryan, DJ Dallas not on the list, but the Seahawks do
Oh.
play in Dallas this year. So we have a chance to add himself to
There's
the
a
list.
chance.
Washington running back Joe Washington scored when the Washington Stadium was in Washington, D.C. at RFK Stadium, so that counts. Oilers defensive back Ken Houston had a pick six in Houston. This was all the way back in 1971. Cowboys kick returner Mark Washington had a 100-yard kick return against Washington at RFK Stadium. And then, man, a lot of Washingtons here. Rams halfback Kenny Washington scored a touchdown in Washington, D.C. 1948, maybe. So there.
I feel like you should only get one city per record. Like you can't have 15 Washington scored in Washington.
Well, then we got one Houston, one Washington, and one London in that case.
I think we had 2 Houstons.
Oh, we do, but
Wilson
said you can only have one name per city.
So we have 2 Houstons, 3 Washingtons, and a London.
Yes.
So there's 6 of them now. Sorry, not 7. All right.
Yeah, 6. All right, moving on. And this is a saucy one. Oh, producer Harry's getting frisky here.
Harry does a good job with these hot takes.
Apparently, fellas, all is not right in Philadelphia, and I think this is actually a fair point. Despite being 4-0, the cracks in the team showed in their overtime close call against the Commanders. True that. And again, this is another example of a team, for some reason, they can't beat their opponent. In this case, Philly seems to struggle with Washington. Last year, I think Philly started 8-0 and Washington beat them in Philadelphia. Luckily, as Harry knows, the McLaurin catch was ruled out of bounds. No call on a false start. It's almost like Harry's a Commanders fan, but he's not. He's a Dolphins fan. No call on the false start on the tush push, and we heard our buddy and boss EK talk about that. He is a Washington fan, in fact, and that led to the game-winning field goal in overtime. Breech, should we be at all concerned? We've talked about all these teams that are successful. We talked about the Chiefs. We talked about the Bills. Any concern about the Eagles, who are 4-0 but have done it in a pretty ugly manner week in and week out?
I would just say their offense hasn't looked as good as it did last year. They're not as much. I mean, they were a high-powered machine last year that just was running over everyone. And so now you've had defensive coordinators that have had an offseason to kind of try and figure out how to slow it down. And
you lost your offensive coordinator too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I do think they've taken a small step back, but doesn't mean that that's anything that's going to last. They might get better as the season goes on. But I think part of it has to do with the fact that Jalen Hurts just doesn't look as accurate as he has in the past. I mean, he just seems slightly off, but he's still putting up fantastic numbers and they're still undefeated. So it hasn't been a huge deal. But I think did he have an interception today? He did not, but he has 3 interceptions through 4 games. He only threw 6 interceptions all last season. So it's just a little less accurate with his throws. But hey, look, they're winning, and that's all that matters.
So, Brinson, is this
we're just worth noting with Hurts too? He had he's carried the ball 31 times through. Or how many times did he carry? He had 9. So he's got 40 carries. He's averaging 10 carries per game through the first 4 weeks of the season. Last year he was up to like 12, and he had. I also think the schedule plays into this a lot too. Like the Eagles had a really easy schedule last year, easiest in the league, as Breech noted, and they took advantage of it and piled up W's early and often, and they're still doing that. But Hurts does just look a little bit off, I think.
Is this a situation where Frank Reich leaves and Doug Peterson takes over and it's not the same? Is this in terms of Shane Steichen leaving for the Colts job and Brian Johnson, first-year coordinator, sort of feeling his way through this, even though he's been on staff? Because to your point, it doesn't feel like things are clicking play calling wise, but they're 4-0, they're finding ways to win. And maybe they, to Breech's point, figure it out as they work through this together.
I think it's probably more the second portion of it. I feel like Sirianni called. I feel like he calls the plays.
No, I think Brian Johnson calls the plays.
Oh, yeah, Brian Johnson. Okay, Brian Johnson. Okay, well, was Steichen calling all the plays last year? I guess you can't
pretty
remember.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is then, right? Like, it's not dissimilar to what you saw when Brian Daboll left Buffalo for the Giants and Ken Dorsey takes over, and you have faith in the guy, you expect him, and like Dorsey's been much better this second year, so I think that's probably a big factor there.
The big irony is that Brian Daboll, according to the Giants fan, has been way worse, whether it's him or Mike Kafka calling plays. They want both of them to quit calling plays, so it's a weird thing, but let me ask you this, Breech. You know that San Francisco's number 1 in the NFC. Who's number 2? You're taking Dallas over Philly, you rolling with Philly, going some other direction?
I'm going to roll with Philly. They're undefeated. They're beating everyone. Look, I like the Lions. I like the Cowboys. Those would be my top 4.
Detroit Lions?
Eagles at 2.
All right.
And by the way, Brian Johnson, first year 2021 as a NFL coach. I've been in college. I've been a coordinator, offensive coordinator at 3 different spots: Utah, Houston, and Florida. Each for I think 1 year, maybe 2 years at Utah, where he's the coordinator. It's a whole different ballgame when you're calling plays in like those sort of in those college offenses versus doing it in the NFL. And so I think definitely some adjustment there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. One more to go, boys. And we got to go talk about my guy, Brandon Staley, but in a good way.
How have we not talked about Kenny Pickett and the Steelers?
I tried to, and Wilson punted.
We're talking winners. And unless you want to talk about Mr. Trubisky, we're not talking about the Steelers.
You want Mr. Trubisky to play?
I would imagine Kenny's hurt, so we'll see what happens here. Anyway, speaking of winners, my guy, Brandon Staley, finds new and exciting ways not to lose games despite his best efforts. This latest one involved somehow convincing Justin Herbert to try to kill himself with Max Crosby. Played the last 3 or 4 minutes with 9 fingers. That aside, the upside.
And as Breech points out, told Antoine Winfield Jr. to get down on the ground after he intercepted the ball with nothing but open space between him and the end zone to score and like put the game away, even though there's like 2 minutes and 40 seconds left.
Asante Samuel.
Excuse me. Winfield.
Asante Samuel Jr. And Breech was asking. We don't know whether Brandon Staley.
I saw the video replay. He told him to get down.
Either way, the upside, the positive, and I'd like you guys to quit harping on the negative with the Chargers, even though they went forward on 4th and 1 the last 2 weeks. Last week from the 24 and didn't get it with 151 to go. This week from the 34, they keep going up 10 yards. Breech. Pretty soon they're going to be in the end zone with about 3.5 minutes to go. Couldn't get it on 4th and 1 either time. Whatever. But Khalil Herbert, that's awesome. Khalil Mack said, not on my watch. 6 sacks in 1 game. He was treating Aiden O'Connell like he was Jimmy Garoppolo facing the Steelers last week. There's the graphic if you're watching on YouTube. Behind only Derek Thomas, who had 7 sacks in 1990. You look down that list. 8 years later, Derek Thomas did it again and got 6 sacks against the Seahawks and then the Raiders. That Adrian Claiborne feels like the outlier there, but I remember that game pretty vividly in 2017 where he went off for the Falcons against the Cowboys. So
Tyron Smith was inactive for that game, remember?
I did not, but thanks for the note there. So Khalil Mack did the heavy lifting early. Brandon Staley and the Chargers hung on for dear life because they charged it up against a terrible Raiders team. Brinson, where are you on the Chargers in their quest to make the playoffs?
So it's a good question, and I think let's sort of look at this from a global AFC picture. The Bills and the Dolphins feel like playoff teams to me. Does that feel fair? 3-1, both 3-1. I mean, assuming health, right? Don't you think? Yeah, like I think the Bills are one of them's going to win the division, one of them's going to be a wild card. Both of them are getting in. Baltimore, I'm pretty comfortable saying is a likely playoff team, and I think right now you could say I don't know on anybody else in the AFC North. Yeah.
Who's the team you mentioned? The Ravens.
The Ravens, yeah. So
no one else is getting into the AFC North.
Right. That's what I'm saying. All right, so we got Ravens winning the AFC North. Bills in is the winner, and then the Dolphins. You just do it however you want. And this sort of goes back to my AFC South point earlier. Let's give one team the division in the AFC South and just have that team make the playoffs. So then you've got the AFC West, which I think the Chiefs will win, obviously, and 2 more wildcard spots. And your wildcards come down to the Pats, the Jets, Steelers, Browns, Bengals, Jaguars, Texans, Titans, Colts. One of those teams that you don't have winning that division. Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos. I mean, I think the Chargers at 2-2, even though they've just like try to give these games away, are a pretty likely wild card playoff team.
Ooh.
And along with the Dolphins, and then I don't know who the hell else the third one is. Maybe it is from the South.
So, what's the percentage chance right now that the Chargers make the playoffs?
I mean, I was going to say like 55%.
Breech over under 55%.
Under.
So here's the thing. Let me ask you this, Breech. yeah, they go for 4th and 1 in the most ridiculous places at the worst times, and they fail every time. At some point, they have to actually convert and win a game easily. Is that counting into your math at all, or it is counting into your math, and that's why the number's so low?
All right, well, here's my issues. Last week, when he did this, which is just unbelievable how this situation comes up so often in Chargers games, as if the football gods are daring Brandon Staley to defy them each week. We're going to put the crazy situation in front of this guy and just see what he does. Last week, he had his running backs who were averaging 2 yards per carry in that game. I think actually like 1.8 yards per carry. And
is that more than one? Is that more than the 4th and 1 they needed, Breech?
Well, hold on. So they go for it on 4th down against the Vikings. They don't get it. This week, what kind of crazy stuff did they think up? Well, they took their 9-fingered quarterback, put him under center, and asked him to run a QB sneak on 4th and 1. You don't even know if your quarterback can take a snap under center because he had his hand stepped on earlier in the game. They had him in shotgun almost primarily after that, even though he really is in shotgun primarily anyway. But this is not a guy you want under center, especially at this point in the game. So it is just insane that, like, if you want to go for it on 4th and 1, especially this one, I felt like they probably thought they could get it. Like, I don't necessarily hate the decision. I hate the play call. I hate everything that went with it. And the Chargers defy logic at all times. It's like last week, the one play I wouldn't have called out of all their plays is the one they called. This week, QB sneak is the one I wouldn't have called because I wouldn't trust Herbert to take the snap. So it is just really unbelievable. And I just think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot until they don't have a foot left. I don't know how many shots that takes.
So
and here, that's where they are.
The Chargers over at DraftKings, minus 105 to make the playoffs, minus 115 to miss the playoffs. Now, take this with a grain of salt because those implied odds don't add up to 100%, but 51.2%, the implied odds of minus 105.
All right, let me ask you this, Brinson and Wilson. You guys both answer this question. You can say, will they win or lose? Chargers versus Cowboys. Who wins?
Cowboys. I don't trust, and I say that not trusting Mike McCarthy any farther than I can drop kick him, and that's not very far.
Chargers versus Cowboys in a Super Bowl
in a game in LA.
The Cowboys would be favored.
Okay, and Chargers Chiefs. Who wins?
The Chiefs by 22 points.
Well,
Wilson.
Depends. Chiefs by 3 points because Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, well, bring that up because those are the Chargers' next 2 games, and if they are 2-4, now how do you feel about them making the playoffs? It's still 55%.
You're the one that's trying to talk yourself.
You're the one. I'm saying they're not going to make the playoffs. I don't think.
But Breech, you're the one trying to talk yourself into the Bengals making the playoffs. So I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm a deranged Bengal. I have a freaking white tiger helmet that I just bought this week, only to watch them lose 27.
Oh, you just bought it? It's nice. By the way,
was it on clearance?
I want to follow up on what. Hold on. I want to follow up on what Breech said earlier about the going forward on 4th downs and both times failing. And the only reason they won those games, Breech, is because Kirby Cousins threw the interception in the end zone, and Aiden O'Connell threw an interception at the 1 yard line. Otherwise, they're losing those games. And
yeah, they won this one because they got out Josh McDaniel by Brandon Staley.
Yeah, he sucks. Brinson, let me ask you this because this is Harry put this in the notes, and I can't believe I didn't ask it to you, Jump Street, because this is your Breech is our pop culture correspondent. You are a revenge game correspondent. Was this Khalil Mack the best revenge game in the history of revenge games?
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you did ask that. It's up there. And Khalil Mack was asked about this. And obviously I do deep dives upon the comments that players who are engaged in revenge games make. And Khalil Mack, they're like, is this one like more, was this a bigger deal for you than, than like previous games? And he was like, look, he's like, you want to play well. He's like, he's like trying to say he respects the Raiders. And that's why, actually I have it right here. Hold on. Let's see. What did he say? He said, he said, I tried to tell y'all, Max, after the game with a smile, it comes in bunches, but I had 6. I'll take it. That is actually a bunch. You can't say it's something extra, but it is what it is. I mean, obviously you want to play good against your old team, but just knowing where you came from and knowing that organization, what it meant to me to get drafted to that organization, it's a lot of respect, but it's a lot of wanting to get back to. At the end of the day, it's just another game. So Khalil Mack basically said, yes, this was my big revenge game. And I probably came here in part because I worked with Brandon Staley in Chicago, but also in part because I get to play the Raiders twice a year. And if I tell you it's just another game, I'm actually lying.
By the way, Khalil had 0 sacks coming into this game. So he upped that number.
He got helped by the fact that Aiden O'Connell apparently thought you get 5 minutes in the pocket after every snap. That
Well,
dude was just holding onto the ball.
You don't.
I mean, Aiden O'Connell and Dorian Thompson-Robinson in tough spots as far as rookies starting games this week.
And by the way, it's just a testament to the differences, and this is something that Brady Quinn's talked about. The differences between preseason, where defenses are just sort of trying to figure things out and work through some things, and because Aiden O'Connell and DTR both were superstar Hall of Famers in the month of August, and that changed right quick. DTR had 3 interceptions, and obviously AOC had the
Browns got obliterated.
Lost
AOC.
a couple fumbles. But I will say AOC actually kind of seemed to click a little bit in the second half.
He did. I was going to say he threw the interception to end the game. He was
His
trying to force
credit.
it. They get it.
They
They're
kept
right.
cutting to his wife a ton during that game too. She was sitting with AJ Cole's wife. Shout out to NC State product AJ Cole.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. All right, quickly, Breech, you have 10 seconds, and Brinson, literally 10 seconds. Sorry, I'm just going to end the podcast. Harry, get your finger over the end button in case Brinson doesn't follow.
You already
the rules.
went 10 minutes long. What's
Give
the
me Breech in 10 seconds. Your Breech VP for the day.
My Breech VP for the day is not Joe Burrow, is not anyone on. It's Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. Brinson, who is your Brinson VP?
My Brinson VP for the day. I think I'm going to go to Lamar Jackson.
That's a good one. We can talk Lamar. We'll talk about him next week, so don't get mad, folks. Mine's going to be CJ Stroud. Great job by him. That's it. That's a wrap. This edition of Sunday Night Super Friends is over, but don't worry. Breech, Brinson, we'll see you guys back here in approximately 168 hours. I did the math. In the meantime, you can check out the Pick Six podcast all week on YouTube at NFL and CBS, or wherever you get your audio podcasts. All right. Thanks to all you guys who hung out with us tonight in the comments. Appreciate you for Brinson and
Smash
Breech.
the like button.
And producer Harry, smash the like button. I'm
And
Wilson. See you
subscribe.
next week.
Bye.